Hello, this is Barron versus Baltimore, an important Supreme Court case, and one of the last great cases during which the presiding Chief Justice was John Marshall. The case posed the following question: does the Bill of Rights protect people against state and local governments? John Barron owned a profitable wharf, the water around which became too shallow after sediment from the city's construction sites was deposited there by runoff streams. So the city had redirected the streams to flow into the harbor, and when the water became too shallow, most ships could no longer approach the wharf, and so Barron lost much of his business. So even though he did not lose the legal title to his business, and even though the city of Baltimore did not physically take his business away from him, he lost interest. He lost some interest in his business because he could no longer make nearly as much money as he had been able to make before. So the Fifth Amendment states, "Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation." This is the last part, the last clause of the Fifth Amendment, and it is known as the Takings Clause. Barron sued the city of Baltimore in a state trial court and won, but a state court of appeals reversed, so Barron appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court of the United States ruled against Barron, stating that the Bill of Rights did not protect people against state and local governments. There are two reasons why, according to Justice Marshall and the Supreme Court, the Bill of Rights does not protect people against state and local governments. First, Marshall used a structural approach to interpreting the Constitution. He argued that when a constitutional provision does not specifically address the states, it does not apply to the states. He drew this conclusion after noting that some identical provisions in Article 1, Section 9 and Article 1, Section 10 actually exist, and these provisions, they prohibit the same things, like granting titles of nobility, passing ex post facto laws, and passing bills of attainder. So why mention these things? Why prohibit them twice? Well, because Article 1, Section 9 prohibits them to the national government, but Article 1, Section 10 specifically addresses this prohibition to the states. So Article 1, Section 10 actually starts with the words, "No state shall." So, in addition to this structural argument that basically presumes that in order to understand any particular part of the Constitution, you may want to check other parts of the Constitution, other parts in this constitutional structure to understand what the provision in question means. Marshall also used a second argument, and that's the intent of the framers. He argued that the history that surrounds the writing of the Bill of Rights indicates that the Bill of Rights was meant to restrain the national government only, and not state and local governments, because state governments already had their own bills of rights, and also because we know from constitutional and immediate post-constitutional debates that the whole point of the Bill of Rights was to appease those who argued that the Constitution created the national government that was too strong, and in order to reduce that strength, or at least to put safeguards around the national government, you needed a Bill of Rights. So, two arguments on part of Marshall, and the court ruled unanimously against John Barron. And thus, we have a ruling that stated that people are not protected against state and local governments by the Bill of Rights. Many decades later, this, of course, would change, as the result of the passage of the 14th Amendment and then decisions by the Supreme Court. But that is story for another day. Thank you for your attention.